Not so long ago, 20th Century Fox released a film called Star Wars. It hit the silver screens of the West End in quite a big way. The film was not so much a piece of science fiction, more an unusual form of space fairy story. I'll support this by mentioning that the film opens with the words, "A long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away." A sort of substitute, you might say, for the words, "once upon a time." Earlier this year, I talked to Mark Hamill, who, if nothing else, proved to me that modesty is not counted as one of his major virtues. I asked him to begin by explaining how Luke Skywalker gets involved in all the adventures he does.
Well, he's sort of swept up unawares. There are small creatures on my planet that are called Jawas, and they're sort of scavengers of the desert, and when they discover robots that are not properly identified, they clean them up and sell them door-to-door android salesmen. And I purchased 2 robots that have hidden rebel tapes that, well, you know, see, even now, as I'm trying to explain the plot, it's only so much nonsense to hang a incredible visual experience, an audio experience.
All right, but I mean, to get to set the scene, the character.
Well, I inadvertently purchased robots that are very important to. There's a galactic civil war being raged in the galaxies between the baddies. We don't know why they're bad. They're just bad. And the goodies. And the robots contain information that could be very helpful to the goodies.
And so basically this involves you because, of course, you set off on your adventures to help the rebel Princess Leia.
Right.
Who, of course, is described in these rebel tapes.
Yeah. What bothers people sometimes, they see spaceships and they say, well, it must be science fiction. And if instead of spaceships we were traveling in pumpkin coaches drawn by 6 white horses, everyone would see that every element in this film is, we have our big bad wolf, we have a fairy princess, we have a wizard, we have a callow, innocent youth, we have a cynical space pirate. The elements are from, not just from fairy tales, but from comic books, from classic literature, Ivanhoe, Treasure Island, Wizard of Oz.
And of course, you are, in some ways, a very classic comic book hero, because you're, as I said, the farm boy who turns hero, which is a very classic line.
Yes.
Tell me, who do you see in some of the main characters, like Luke Skywalker? Who do you model him on?
It's difficult to talk about this in retrospect because George's screenplay was very clear. I could see my function in the screenplay. Mind you, I might have preferred to be Han Solo. I mean, the John Wayne, hey, I've been all around this galaxy, buddy, you know.
Han Solo's a mercenary space traveler.
That's it. And he has the same skepticism that the audience has. So in other words, the robots to me appealed to me more than my character, but I could see what George wanted from my character.
You said once that George Lucas seems to impress his own character on Luke Skywalker.
Yes.
In fact, there's a distinct similarity in the names, which I noticed. I don't know if there's any significance in it. Luke Skywalker and George Lucas.
Yeah. Well, I think what happened was his intention when he first thought of Star Wars was to make a movie that he wanted to see. You see, he opened up the newspaper, he's looking around at movies, and he thought, well, here's a movie about a returning Vietnam War veteran who finds his wife raped and his children slaughtered. So cut off the shotgun, and it's a real good hour-and-a-half of vengeance, which is fine. I mean, there's got to be room for all kinds of films. But he kind of turned to Gary Kurtz, the producer, and said, you know, gee, wouldn't it be great if somebody made like a high adventure for children and made them a film that would engage their imagination, to make them want to see what lies beyond the horizon. They figured, well, if no one else is doing it in Hollywood, we should do it ourselves.
Of course, it's not only you who, in some ways, are a fairy tale comic book strip character. Because, of course, there's Darth Vader, the Dark Lord of the Sith, who's actually dressed in black.
Absolutely. Evil personified.
And Princess Leia, who looks, would you say perhaps she looks a bit like Snow White at one point?
Well,
the buns on the side of her head is what
she
I've
calls them
read into.
furry headphones. As a matter of fact, in America, they said, was that your real hair or, you know, false hair? And she said, No, they weren't real. And they said, well, where are they now? I said, well, I left my buns in England. They said, well, really, what are they doing there? She said, I think repertory theater, and I think they had a guest shot on Are You Being Served? She's very a witty girl. Back to what you said about George Lucas being...
impressing his own character.
Yes. I think what happened was he sat down at a typewriter, and since he was trying to make a movie that really appealed to him, he sort of imagined himself as the hero, and he thought, okay, now what would I like to do? I think I want to be the guy at the very end that flies the spaceship and becomes this hero, and
He's
I'd like to...
living out his childhood fantasies.
Sure, sure. He put it all into what represents his character. Absolutely.
In fact, probably what you wanted to do, because you were very interested in comic books as a child, weren't you?
I find more and more parallels between the two of us. Not that I equate myself with someone who I think is a really brilliant, imaginative person. But still, we have the similarities of a great love of gadgetry and toys and special effects.
Can you tell me a bit about how you got involved in Star Wars? Because, of course, you've been involved in mainly television things before. In fact, this is your first major film, isn't it? Was it an open interview system?
Yes.
I mean, it was an open audition?
Yes, absolutely. I wish I had a classic story to tell you, because it would be perfect for this movie to say that I went to a restaurant and I sat down and I ordered my meal, and suddenly a man across the room leapt out of his chair and said, "There's Luke Skywalker," and handed me a contract and had me sign it right away.
But it didn't happen like that.
It's not true, no. I heard that there was a film being cast called Star Wars, and I said, "Do you know anything about it?" And they said, "I don't know. I think it's something like Flash Gordon, but there's no script to be seen. No agents were sent scripts, no actors were sent scripts." So I just met George. I either got on a checklist of yes, I want to see him again, or no, I don't want to see him again. And I got on the yes list, and then I got a 6-page scene, which I tested for. The first time I ever saw the full screenplay was after, in fact, I'd been hired.
Yeah, that's
for
what
the
I was going to
role.
ask you to do. An audition like that, for a film like this, what do they ask you to do? They actually give you a scene from the film?
The first interview, they just said, "Tell us a little bit about yourself." The second interview, they asked me to act out a scene. And it was absurd, because I was trying to get the style of the film. I couldn't tell whether it was parody or... I mean, in 6 pages.
Oh, right.
I keep quoting a line from the film, which fortunately never made it to the screen. In fact, I didn't even film it. It was cut out of one of the early screenplays. Because I thought, I can't do this. I just can't do this. I mean, I could hardly say it, much less believe it.
Well, try.
All right. And putting me on the spot. These are nice trousers. On the way to Alderaan, we discover this planet has been blown up. Have you seen the film?
Yes.
Right when we come upon the princess's planet.
Yes.
And then Harrison says, "I don't know, it must be some sort of asteroid collision or whatever."
That's right.
And he turns to me and he said, "Look, I've held up my part of the bargain. As soon as we get to an acceptable spaceport, you, the old man, and the droids get the axe."
Yes, of course, we won't say why, but that particular planet isn't there anymore.
Right.
Which is what's slightly confusing.
Right. Well, it's been vaporized. And they actually, in print, expected me to reply in response to his declaration that we all get dropped off as soon as he finds a suitable planet, with proper enthusiasm, was, "But we can't turn back. Fear is their greatest defense. I doubt if the actual security there is any greater than it was on Aquilai or Sullust, and what there is most likely directed towards a large-scale assault." And be convincing. I mean...
Seems that Luke Skywalker has meant to have been taking lessons in Shakespeare.
Yes, I mean, I thought, oh no, what goes on here? I thought, if someone would give me a clue, because the style, I always find the style is so important to a film. And I tried to draw out of George, is this like camp? Like, you know, we're winking at the camera and telling the audience, well, we understand how silly this all is. But fortunately, since he was reticent to give me, he wanted to see what I brought to it rather than what he should put into it. I took a sincere.
Yes.
I mean, I did it as sincerely as I could. I did it just then.
Certainly, that's a very interesting line. Tell me, later on, of course, you went to the filming, and they filmed these things in the wrong order.
Yes.
In some ways, and they don't have any effect. What did you think when you first saw it all pulled together? Because presumably when you were filming it was all very actor-oriented, but of course the film itself has a lot of effects.
Yes.
And did that strike you when you first saw it all pulled together?
Well, they were very fair about that, and they tried to prepare us as best they could, because there are about 366 opticals in the film.
Yes.
And before I even came to England to start shooting, they brought me out to where they did the special effects in California, except for the live-action special effects, and that's a misnomer here, that all the special effects were done in England, and that's certainly not to denigrate the artists here.
Yeah,
Johnny Steers, John Barry, all those guys did an amazing job, but the miniatures that were done in Southern California. So I went over to Industrial Light and Magic, which was the firm that was doing the special effects, and they showed me all the spacecraft, you know, and they showed me storyboards, almost like a cartoon strip.
It was basically preparing you, and
right, showing me the visualizations of what it was. They never expected us to look out onto a blank screen, and I mean, they always showed us what we were supposed to be looking at.
Related to the special effects, there are a couple of criticisms, because the special effects, I must say myself, I found very stunning, really stunning. I think it's certainly the best I've seen. One critic said that regardless of when in time it's set, a fairy tale Star Wars may be, but the world is very definitely our own. But to create another world would require more imagination, and not just an increase in technology. I think what he was referring to is the fact that in the effects you have laser guns that look very much like Second World War gun turrets.
Which in fact they were.
Ah, I didn't know that. And he was thinking this is incompatible with the civilization that's obviously as advanced as the people depicted in Star Wars.
Well, Star Wars is set in the past, isn't it?
It's just got to be a totally separate line of development.
Well, Earth is never mentioned. Earth is, there's no relationship to Earth in time or space. It's never referred to. The opening credit says a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That's as close as they can come to saying once upon a time.
That's right, yes. Gary Kurtz mentioned a very similar thing. But there are other criticisms as well on a similar line. Basically what they're saying is the film's inconsistent in terms of its treatment of technology and how it might develop, or even if separate.
Well, here you have people trying to make order of something that is just so much nonsense.
Yes, it's too much of a fairy tale. Some people say actually went too much to a fairy tale, that at points, for example, your name, Luke Skywalker. I mean, they're saying that Luke Skywalker as a name seems a bit too far.
Well, I suggested Luke Smith, but for some reason George felt that they should give me a little flashier name. I don't know what the matter with him is. He's a crazy guy.
Luke Skywalker.
Well, I wish everyone could accept the film in the nature that it was intended. I mean, George made this movie for 5-year-olds, and instead you have critics that are 45-year-old reviewing it and trying to put it in context with Moliere and some sort of intellectual experience they have with... I mean, well, they say, well, it certainly isn't Scenes from a Marriage, is it?
No.
How do you answer a question like that?
You raised an interesting point.
Not...
When you made it, you didn't expect it to be a success as it is.
Yeah, I did.
You did?
Yes, I expected it to be a very successful film. I expected it, at the very least, to make $30 million. I thought it would be one of the top 10 films of this year. If you're saying, did I expect it to be this big? Of course not.
No.
I never dreamed it would be this big.
Now that it's happened, of course, you're a lot wealthier than you were. Will that change you?
How do you know that?
I read it in the Evening News.
Really?
I'm sorry,
It's a wonderful paper. How rich am I, according to the Evening News?
I wouldn't like to quote them, because I wouldn't trust them to that extent.
Because if I'm rich enough, I just might take this whole crew out to dinner.
Ah.
No, you know what it is. Everyone is so interested in money. The whole thing is, I never got into this business for money. I went in, I could make 10 times the amount of money in television, because I was a television star, you see, in
That's right.
America. And then George Lucas came along and said, okay, we're offering you this film part, and you're going to get 1/10 the amount you make in TV. Well, I would have paid him. So I made the film on a weekly salary, very modest salary. Big deal. Then a week before the film opens, he calls us up and says, hey, I want to give you a present. And I thought he was going to give us like a toy robot or something weird, because George is so crazy. And instead, he said, well, I'm going to give you 1/4 point, which is nice. You say, well, that's great, because what he's saying, in effect, that's 1/4 of 1%, not a full percentage
That's
point.
right.
But if he was going to make that gesture, that's like a thank you. It's a vote of confidence. I mean, if we make money, then you'll make a small amount of money.
So you've got 1/4 of 1%. That's not. That's only one facet of success in some ways. Another thing
I didn't get
you.
into acting to make money.
Oh no. But I mean,
So
it's one
this is like
facet of
winning a
success.
lottery. It's like, boom, all of a sudden, okay, now you own this dump truck of money. We're going to drive it up to your backyard and dump it over, and you go,
The quote
oh,
was
good.
in the evening news, actually, that all your brothers are expecting you to buy them Mercedes for Christmas.
Well, that is true, but you see, they thought that before I even did Star Wars. They thought, oh, if we see him on television, he must have a maid, a chauffeur, you know,
Yes.
because that's my family is not into filmmaking or Hollywood or anything else. They have this big dream that my next-door neighbor on one side is Raquel Welch, on the other side it's Paul Newman.
Do you find
Hiya,
you can walk down
Raquel.
the
Hiya,
streets?
Paul.
Do you find you can walk down the streets nowadays?
I do very well here.
Ah, but the film hasn't come out here yet, as we talk. It will by the time it's shown. But can you walk down the streets in the United States?
I can if I want to spend 4 hours discussing Star Wars. And to tell you the truth, I'm sick of it.
I'm not surprised, to be honest. Do you get a
Well,
lot of-
I mean, you know, I don't mean to be I'm trying to be flippant with you, but actually, in actual fact, you know, you live, eat, breathe, and sleep Star Wars to the point where you go, ah!
Scream.
Yeah. So one night, I was just nodding off to sleep, and all of a sudden, it just occurred to me. I said, you know, this is the first day in about 1.5 years that I've never even thought of Star Wars.
Had you gone out of the house?
No, it just occurred to me in my house. What I'm saying is, just by thinking of it, I ruined the thought. I should have waited till the
Right,
next
yes.
morning.
Do you get a lot of fan mail? Or don't they track you down that easily?
No, it all either comes to the office or to me, and I read it all. It's,
You read it all?
Yeah.
How much of it is there?
Oh, about this much.
It's all just,
This high.
it's all just Mark Hamill, aren't you great? And
Well, a lot of times it's, Dear Luke, how can I build a lightsaber? Which is this
or do
force
were you
beam.
scared when you were dragged under by that slimy worm?
Right. That's the best, you know, I mean, the best thing about this whole film has been the kids, because they think they know me now. And since my character in the film appeals to them, they feel very safe with me. They feel like, well, I could do that. I mean, he's
Yes.
not spectacularly talented. And that's the cleverness, that this very simple kind
It's
of...
a glorified Batman in some ways.
Well, he's so naive, and he's so kind of, oh, golly, you know.
I see what you mean.
You know, that he's not like, well, do this and do that, and that's how we'll win. It's just that he's driven by his own sincerity.
Can we talk briefly about the promotion of the film, actually? Because, are you a fan of Star Trek? I know Star Trek's something different, but are you a fan of Star Trek? I mean, you're a sci-fi
fan, yes, I
Yeah.
am, but what happened to me was that I went to Japan for about 2.5 years, so the entire time it was on in the United States I missed. Now it's on reruns. The first time I ever saw Star Trek was in England.
Ah, well, what I was going to ask you
I
is,
said,
do you
look at all
think-
these English actors dubbed with American accents. How weird.
Yes, that's another thing I was going to talk about, but never mind. What I was going to ask you is, I wonder if the hole that's left by Star Trek, because there are an awful lot of Star Trek fans about the place, in England as well, and they haven't got anything furnishing them at the minute. Do you think Star Wars in some way fill that hole?
I don't know, because what I've seen of Star Trek is, again, it's science fiction as a projection of what they think the future will be like based on science and technology as we know it.
Right.
Whereas Star Wars purposely divorces itself from that so they can do anything they want. So there's a tendency in Star Trek to have like a message that an allegory that we can relate to,
Yes.
you know, with modern day problems.
So they're
I don't know if
different.
but I don't know if it'll satisfy the Star Trek people, because I can't tell whether they're really, you know, obsessed with the hardware and the technology, or if it is an intellectual
Maybe
experience.
that's why there's so much enthusiasm for Star Wars and so much criticism, because the criticism perhaps comes from people who expect it to fill the gap
Yeah,
that Star Wars is meant to
yeah.
have. Finally, can I ask you, is this the first time you've had to do a round of publicity interviews? I mean, not for in
this
England,
scale,
but Star
sure,
Wars,
sure,
yes.
yes.
You must find it very exhausting to sort of come into studios like this and get told, there's a camera, sit down,
Yeah.
begin.
But yes, but there's a great desire on my part to justify them buying me a free ticket to come to England. In
Yes,
other words,
true.
if I came all this way and every question you asked, I said, no.
But I mean, how much notice were you given of this interview, for example? I mean, the press agent who's coming around with you, Sue, and did she tell you you're just coming here, sit down, and tell you where you are when you're here?
Well, no, Sue gave us a whole itinerary. It was, you know, 7 pages of, you know, okay, you have breakfast with the Queen, lunchtime you meet Elton John, and Friday you commit suicide on public television.
What did you do just before you came here?
We had lunch at this restaurant with the, it was for a German pop magazine.
And just after you leave here?
I don't know. I think I have to go dance with a mailman or something.
No,
I don't know.
I think I know rather than you.
You do?
You're appearing on Blue Peter.
Oh, yes. No, okay. I take that back. Blue Peter I'm looking forward to because I used to watch it when I was here.
Ah. Well, anyway, enjoy yourself at Blue Peter, and thanks very much indeed for coming along.
My pleasure.